Hey everybody, welcome back to Checkerboard Chat, the official sports podcast of the Daily Beacon. I'm Tyler Wombles, that's Damichael Cole, and we're back bringing you some more Tennessee athletics news, updates, and whatever we want to talk about. So kicking off this episode a little bit, Damichael, obviously Tennessee football, their homecoming game is this Saturday. This is a team that's lost multiple games in a row, coming off a loss to Kentucky. I think it was the first time Tennessee lost to Kentucky in years.
The Dooley era, and then before that, it was like 19 in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So it was over 30 years.
Yeah, I think it was like just the second time Kentucky has won in this matchup in the last 32 series games, that's a pretty crazy number. Just to start off here, Damichael, just a little bit, what are your main takeaways from that game, and how do you think that's going to transfer into this game Saturday?
Well, the team still has a long way to go. That's what we realized in that game. I felt like the offense would improve. If you remember from last week, my bold prediction was that the offense would score over 30 points. And they scored 26. They missed 2 field goals. But, granted, you don't want your kicker kicking 6 field goals. And that just showed that the offense still is having the same issues. They moved the ball better against Kentucky, but they're still struggling in the red zone. Same things that we've seen all season that they're struggling with defensively. Same struggles. They can't stop the run right now. And Southern Miss can run the ball. Mm-hmm. So this might not be easy. Just like, UMass wasn't easy. And Southern Miss is definitely better than UMass. Southern Miss only lost to 7 points against Kentucky earlier this season. Kentucky beat UT. So it'll be interesting.
And like you said, UMass, obviously we remember that game. Tennessee just barely scraped by against the Minutemen. And I think that makes this matchup a little bit more interesting. Obviously this is the type of game, you schedule your homecoming game. It should be, when you schedule that game, you're thinking blowout.
Yeah.
You're thinking this is an easy game for the team to win and, have the alumni back and fill up the stands. But the way this season has gone, I don't know if everything's going to go Tennessee's way on Saturday. They may get the win, but there could be, more empty seats in the stands than people expect there to be, or would have expected to be when this game was initially scheduled. Obviously, we know there is that empty kneeling movement going on. I don't know if that will really come to fruition, but, it could. And it's also a night game. It's a 7:30 p.m. game. But, just talking about Southern Miss a little bit. Obviously, I think they're 5-3 on the season. This is not a pushover team. Southern Miss, they're historically a program that's been around for a long time, a team that has had success. And obviously, this Tennessee team, I wouldn't say they're reeling right now, but that loss to Kentucky really hurts.
Yeah, they are reeling.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. I think, and I said this before, I said, if Tennessee loses to Kentucky, before they played them, I said, if Tennessee loses to Kentucky, this could be, a new low for this program that it hasn't hit in years.
Yeah.
And I think we're at that point right now. I think that Tennessee, in most seasons, you'll lose to Alabama usually. You sometimes lose to Georgia, especially with how good Georgia is this year.
Right.
We know that the South Carolina contests have been close, but you just don't lose to Kentucky. That's what happened to the Vols on Saturday. And I think that will make it interesting to see, what kind of mentality will this Tennessee team have going into Saturday's game. If they go in there thinking this is going to be an easy game, a pushover game, they might be surprised. Damichael, just talking a little bit about Jarrett Garantano.
Yeah.
Tennessee's starting quarterback. Obviously, he's a redshirt freshman. He's a guy that didn't start out the season as a starting quarterback, but has now morphed into that role. Damichael, he played better against Kentucky.
Definitely.
Just talk a little bit about, his performance against them and what you see him doing against Southern Miss.
He played almost as well as he could. I feel like 18 for 23, you can't ask for much more out of a quarterback. He was very accurate. He missed some passes, but that was largely due to pressure. And that's the thing about Southern Miss. Southern Miss is not going to be like a lot of these teams they've played. They've gotten, they had 2 games with Garantano starting that they've had 7 sacks allowed. 7. And this week, you're going to be missing Marcus Tatum. You're going to be missing Brett Kendrick. The offensive line is in shambles right now, so it's setting up for one of those kind of weeks again. But Southern Miss doesn't have a really good pass rush. Southern Miss only has, nobody on their team has over 3.5 sacks this season. 3.5 sacks. And we're week 8, week 9 now.
Yeah.
So this isn't a team that generally gets a good pass rush, and I think that'll help Garantano out. And I think John Kelly back, and you can mix in some Ty Chandler even more now because his confidence is up now. And he even said it in pressers earlier this week. Ty Chandler said that the game is starting to slow down for him, and that's what you want to hear out of a young player. You want him to feel like that game is starting to slow down so he can play at another speed. So I feel like Garantano, he should play well. It's going to depend on the defense. I mean, it's all on the defense. They're about to play a running back that has averages over 100 yards a game, has 7 touchdowns. The defense is going to have to stop the run, and we haven't seen them do that.
You're right, and also I like how you mentioned the offensive line there because I think that's one of the key proponents of the game to watch on Saturday. I think, Tennessee's offensive line has struggled this season. We obviously saw what Alabama did to that unit, the amount of times they hit Garantano, and they didn't play very well against Kentucky either, really at all. And I think, going into this matchup on Saturday, knowing it's not an SEC opponent, it's more of a lower-level opponent, initially you would think, they can use this opportunity to sort of get some experience, build up, maybe that chemistry between that unit. And then you have Brett Kendrick out. And then you have, Marcus Tatum dealing with an injury. And you have to move Trey Smith to tackle.
Right.
I think that this will be an interesting game and from the offensive line's perspective because, what would have been really I don't want to say an easy game, but a game where they could really work to sort of get that experience and develop as a unit.
Agree.
Now, you're really struggling and really just trying to survive.
Yeah, it hurts. It hurts for them to be missing Tatum and Kendrick in this game because this would have been that game where they could have built that consistency on the offensive line, that continuity that Coach Scott's talking about, that Bush Jones is talking about, that they need, that any offensive line needs. And now you're missing those two players, and you're not going to be going against a great defensive line. I mean, if Southern Miss gets over 4 sacks, then something is really going on with this UT offensive line because, like I said earlier, nobody on that team has over 4 sacks this year. So they generally don't get a great pass rush. I mean, their defense isn't bad overall, but the pass rush of Southern Miss is not their strength.
Yeah, and obviously, Tennessee has been, played a stretch of SEC games where they've, competed against Alabama, really SEC pass rushers, and like you said,
gotten hit.
Yeah, and if Garantano is still getting hit against Southern Miss's defenders, then there is a problem for this Tennessee offensive line, and it's a lot deeper than just injuries.
Yeah.
If that's still the case. But switching gears here a little bit, Damichael, Tennessee's wide receivers. Obviously against Kentucky, I think they had a better performance, but still not exactly to the level that you want to see this unit. If you're Butch Jones, what did you see out of them against Kentucky, and what do you think that they will bring to the table against Southern Miss?
Well, the thing about the wide receivers is when I did the football grades earlier this week, I gave them a B-, which was one of their better grades of the year.
Okay.
But that's still not where they need to be.
Right.
And there are a lot of factors that go into why Garantano's getting sacked so much. Let's be honest. It's not just the offensive line.
Right. Yep.
Sometimes Garantano holds on to the ball a little too long.
That inexperience of a rookie quarterback.
Exactly. And then you got to factor in that we can see it very, very well from the press box that the wide receivers don't get a lot of separation sometimes.
Yeah. Exactly.
And with the receivers not getting a lot of getting away, getting separation, you see the struggles of them getting open and Garantano having to scramble around and things like that. So the receivers definitely have to play better. I mean, I think they took a step in the right direction. A lot of receivers got involved. We saw Tyler Bird finally get some action in there. I'm not sure of Josh Smith's injury status. Do you know? But
he's been ruled out.
Yeah, okay. So, Josh Smith's out, so we probably will see a lot more of Tyler Bird. So that'll be huge for them. He's going to have to play well. And then you factor in Josh Palmer, who I think he had a reception last week too.
Yeah.
And Jeff George had a couple catches. So a lot of receivers are getting involved. But now, I mean, they need that alpha dog.
Yeah.
They need that one guy who third downs, okay, look, that's who we're going. If everyone's covered, you're throwing him the ball because he has a chance at making the play. And earlier in the year, it looked like Callaway was that guy. but we haven't seen that as of late. So the wide receivers, they definitely have to show something this game.
And I think one thing that's really hurt that unit in terms of, not having that alpha dog is because Juwan Jennings is out. I mean, he's that guy. I mean, I know it's obvious, but he's that guy that, not just that unit, but the whole team really looks to sort of be that motivator, be that guy who just leaves it all out there on the field, plays his heart out, and he's not there.
Right.
And so I think that has really hurt this group's chemistry. I think they've had to turn to some guys that don't necessarily have that passion, that fire right now. And I think that's, like you said, that's what they're looking for. But real quick, Damichael, just what Tennessee players do you think could have a standout game against Southern Miss, and how do you think that Tennessee's defense overall will line up against Southern Miss's offense?
Standout players, I'm going to go with a group. I'm going to go with the running back group.
Okay.
All of the offensive line struggles. I feel like this could be the first game 2 guys could rush for over 100 yards.
Okay.
That's bold, but I mean, John Kelly, he should get a lot of carries, and I feel like the game will be close for a while, which means Ty Chandler should get some carries as well. You could see both of those guys go for over 100, or even, they could combine for 200. I mean, maybe John Kelly gets 120 and Chandler gets you 80 yards, but I think the running back group will be big in this game. Hopefully the wide receivers can give you some production as well, but I'm not so sold on the defense. I'm more confident in the pass defense. The pass defense ranked top 5 in the nation. Granted, they have played, a lot of teams that are run heavy, but, numbers don't lie. Yeah. And at this point of the season, if you're allowing under 150 passing yards, you're doing something right.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It's going to be about stopping the run. And we know Southern Miss has dual-threat quarterback, and their running back, as I mentioned earlier, he's averaging 5.7 yards a carry. Averages over 100 yards a game, and UT's had trouble. We saw what Benny Snell did last week. We saw what Damian Harris, Jalen Hurts. We saw Georgia running back core. We saw Georgia Tech. All year long, we've seen the running back struggles. So they'll have to stop the run to win the game. But I think that their rush defense won't be spectacular, but they'll be just good enough to get the job done.
Yeah, and I think right now, and this is something that, I don't think we would have expected going into the season and even throughout the first couple games.
Right.
This Tennessee defense is probably the strongest group in terms of, offense, defense, special teams. Mm-hmm. Normally under Butch Jones, the special teams has been really the key. You've had really great special teams play, but with Evan Berry, being banged up really all season and a lot of inconsistency at the kicker position, and this defense really improving week to week, I think this defense is the team's strongest unit right now.
Right now, yeah, no doubt about it.
But sort of switching gears now, we're going to talk a little bit about Tennessee basketball.
Right.
Obviously, the Vols are playing in a game tonight. It's an exhibition game against Carson Newman at Thompson Bowling Arena. Just to kick that off, DeMichael, what are you looking for in this game, and who are some plays that you think could have a standout night?
First thing you want to see out of this team is they've talked about the depth. They recruited the guards. Mm-hmm. They recruited the big men to now they have 4 guys over 6'7".
Yeah.
They only had 3 guys total over 6'5" 3 years ago.
Yeah.
We had Ermos Schofield playing power forward, but
yeah.
he's on the wing now because they have big men. So the first thing is, how is this depth gonna? Because everyone's gonna play.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna play. How are they going to play? Who's going to stand out? Who's going to separate themselves? Because right now, at the guard position, it's 4 players back there competing for 2 spots just about. You got Jordan Bone, Jordan Bowden, you got Chris Darrington, James Daniel, and you got Lamonte Turner. So it's really 5, but Jordan Bowden plays more of the shooting guard role. He can play the 3 as well. Yeah. So really those other 4 guys are going to be really huge. How will they separate themselves? I'm looking for Jordan Bone to have a really big game. Granted, he is coming off of a little bit of an injury, but I know he had 11 assists in their last scrimmage against Davidson. 11 assists.
It was a true point guard.
Yeah, exactly. And he should be big. And I'm looking for Derek Walker out of all the freshmen to impress the most. He's very physical. And Rick Barnes has said this is the most physical team that he's had since he's been here. And I think Derek Walker is a big reason why, because he's that freshman. He's come in and brought that physical mentality. So I'm looking for Derek Walker to have a big game as a freshman and Jordan Bone to lead these guards. But the newcomers, especially Chris Darrington and James Daniel, they should be interesting as well.
For sure, and I think it'll be very interesting, I think, for me to see, what does Rick Barnes do in this third season?
Yeah.
I think that we've seen with Tennessee basketball, a lot of times coaches come into situations in other sports where, they're expected maybe to win right away, or they're expected, have a lot of pressure on them. I don't feel like Barnes has had that pressure so far. I feel like he's very well liked around Tennessee. I feel like a lot of the people respect him. A lot of his players respect him. And he's a guy, he coached at Texas. He's been around for a long time. And so I think Tennessee has sort of, just given him, at least from what I've seen, I think they've sort of given him this free reign to see,
no doubt about it,
build the program, make it better. And I think, this season, last year I think they were like 16-16. I think they're exactly 500. This year, there's more expectations. I don't think anyone is saying that this team is going to be amazing, but they, people think they should at least make the tournament. I know that, they were ranked second to last in the SEC rankings, but a lot of people have disagreed with that. So I think it'll be interesting to see, maybe that pressure build a little bit more on Rick Barnes to see, if he doesn't get it done this season. Do you think he might?
I like that.
Yeah.
Because this will be the first year where it's like, okay, you have a good stable of big men now. Like, you have enough, because we've seen that they've been undersized the first 2 years. And everyone knew that. So, okay, you have big men now. Okay, you bring in James Daniel, who's a high-scoring guard from Howard.
Yeah.
You bring in a guy like Chris Darrington. So you have a good guard core. And you bring in a decent freshman class. So now it's like, okay, how can he coach him?
Yeah.
So that's what everyone wants to see now.
And it'll be interesting to see, if that doesn't happen, if the team doesn't get to where people want them to be, if Barnes feels a little bit more of that pressure after this season, or if they do get there, how much, I guess, more free reign will he have, and how how will that change?
And fans have to be realistic now, because, Tennessee has improved. There's no doubt about it. Tennessee this year will be an improved basketball team, but so has the rest of the SEC. I think 4 teams had a top 20 recruiting class based off ESPN's rankings. 4 teams. So, and these aren't, I'm not talking about just Kentucky.
Right.
Teams like Alabama that are on here, and Missouri. So, these teams are improving. Auburn had a nice recruiting class. So, you just got to factor that in as well.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. And that's going to wrap it up for us today, guys. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. But make sure to check out the Daily Beacon website for all of our sports content. Also follow the Daily Beacon at UTK Daily Beacon, and then at UTK Beacon Sports for totally sports-related content. Also follow me on Twitter. That's at Tyler Wombles. And then
at Damichael C.
See, I can never remember that. I should be able to, but it's just it's everything except the OLE.
Yep.
But we'll get there sometime. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. We really appreciate it. Make sure to keep updated with the Beacon, and keep watching for next week's episode, and we'll see you next time.